Would you like to start the live screen?
We're live, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. Cabinet members are all present in the room, with the exception of Councillor Hardy, who sends her apologies. And Cabinet support. I don't know whether Cathay is remote. Cathay, can you hear and see me?
Yes, I can, Chair. I'm here, present.
Jenny Bartlett.
She sent her apologies, Chair.
Thank you, Pauline. And Peter Chandler sent his apologies, and John Hardwick as well. So I'll just go around and ask the group leaders to confirm their attendance, please. First of all, Councillor Terry James.
Yes, present and correct. Can I give the apologies? I've just had a telephone call from Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Yes, me too. Present and correct. Thank you.
Councillor James, do you know if Councillor Matthews is sending a substitute?
Not as I am aware of. I mean, I didn't directly have the message. There was just on my notepad when I got into the house.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fagan.
Yes, good afternoon, Leader.
You can hear and see me, thank you. Councillor Wilding.
Yes, I can see and hear you. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you very much. Now going to the Scrutiny Committee chairs. Councillor Howells.
Councillor Howells has sent his apologies, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Swinglehurst.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can hear and see you. And can I just, for clarification, agenda item 6, reports from the scrutiny committees, that this pertains to reports that are relevant to items on the cabinet agenda today, and not general reports. It's not very clear from the way that's worded.
Yes, this is a new item. Just to give a little bit more profile to the scrutiny committees, there will be a report to this committee in writing, I think, which we would then consider. There are no written reports, so that item we'll skip over quite quickly.
Okay, thank you. But that's a future thing to bear in mind then. Thanks, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Starr.
Yes, good afternoon, Leader. I'm here and I can hear and see you.
Right, thank you. And finally, Councillor Balderson.
He's given her apologies.
Apologies, thank you very much. We have a number of officers attending who will be introduced as they are called upon. So I'll now formally open the meeting, and I'd like to welcome to the meeting the Children's Commissioner who's been appointed, Helena Brazil, who will have a word a little bit later on in the meeting. Also, Francis Fernandez, who's joined us as Deputy Monitoring Officer. Thank you. And we welcome Paul Simons at his first meeting as well. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and make a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking, and please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussing with Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives, where appropriate, to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands.
Excuse me, Chairman, could you possibly speak up, because it's difficult to hear?
Certainly, yes, I will do that. So first of all, apologies for absence. Have any apologies been notified to the clerk? Sarah?
Just the apologies from Councillor Harvey or Cabinet members.
Thank you, and we now have them from Councillor Matthews.
Indeed.
Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interest or items on the agenda today? And I should mention that I am advised by the Deputy Monitoring Officer, and in order to avoid any doubt or confusion, that any member who is also a City Councillor should not take part in the debate on the town hall paper. Such members may be conflicted or could be perceived by the public to have a conflict. And therefore, it is important that to avoid any suggestion that such members may try and use their position to influence the decision, that such members who are twin-hatted leave the room and take no part in the debate when this item is discussed. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest?
No, Leader, can I come back on that? I would just like to say, because I'm a twin-hatted, it's very difficult for me to be on both sides. And I'm sort of, I feel I have a duty here as a county councillor, but I also have a duty of the city council as well. So I would just like to say I do object to what is happening, but I will have to leave the room and not take part in the vote and discussion.
Yes, through you, Chair. It is for the member to decide whether to declare the interest, but I think the advice is that in this situation, because there is a conflict of interest and a potential what's called a DPI, it's safest for the member to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So moving on to the minutes, item 3, to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of July. It has been identified that there is an error in the published minutes in respect of the apologies, which should have been noted from Councillor Gemma Davis, Councillor Ellie Childs and Councillor Ange Tyler. Cabinet members, with that correction noted, are you content that the minutes are otherwise an accurate record? Favour? Good. Thank you. Item 4, to receive any questions from members of the public. We received 3 questions from members of the public for this meeting, and a response to each has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those members of the public who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary to join the meeting to ask their question, or join the meeting to ask their question live. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if a supplemental question is to be asked for each question. The first questioner is Mr. Mackay. Do we have a supplemental question?
We don't on this occasion, Chair.
Thank you very much. The second one is from Mr. Hicks and Mrs. Albright. Do we have a supplemental?
We do, Chair. They've sent it in writing and asked that it be read for them. Put it on screen for you and just read that on their behalf.
Chairman, could that be read so that members of the
Yes,
public
well, yes.
will know what's been going on? Yes.
The supplementary question reads, thank you for your answer. We appreciate the specifics for Dover are unique, but also feel that there is merit in asking for the Herefordshire neutrality criteria to be reassessed by NE in light of the now agreed negligible impact from new housing and the disproportionate weight of demonstrating neutrality for housing as identified in the Dover case. HCILG acknowledged the progress relating to wetlands with thanks. However, the wetland initiative is unlikely to make much difference to the majority of developments held or paused, many of which have been waiting for more than 3 years and face desperate future circumstances through no fault of our own. The demand for credits outstrips all projected supply, and the costs and timescales are of grave concern. We would also like to ask that HC are clear in their wider communication that the wetlands, although facilitated by HC, are being paid for entirely by local house builders who have been willing partners / customers from the beginning and stepped up and agreed to pay for solutions, not only to enable them to trade and provide much needed homes and jobs, but also to continue to contribute to Herefordshire and help restore our ravaged economy.
Councillor Harrington, you're able to
Yes,
respond to
if I've got a battery in that, yes, I have. Yes, thank you very much for that question again, Mary. All right. I will go, so in relation to the con, we will make it, and I have myself personally made it very clear of how the mitigation is being paid for and where the burden is falling currently. In relation to the question about Dover, we've agreed, Rachel Joy and I agreed again to go back to Dover and to speak to Natural England around the points that are raised around de minimis, and to see whether or not there is a way that we can, looking at the Dover case, which is quite different in a sense from ours, which I think Ms Albright and others have acknowledged, that Dover was below the area that was protected, and therefore perhaps was inaccurately put into the moratorium area. But there are also things that are being done that maybe we might be able to argue the case with Natural England. So I'll give her assurance that we will do that, and we will report back to HCILG.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. The next question was from Ms Reid. I don't know whether she has a supplemental question.
She does, Leader, and again, I've got that in writing to read on her behalf.
Thank you.
The supplementary question reads, firstly, Leeds City Council Children's Services, assessed as outstanding in March 2022, does still offer family group conferences, including when requested by families. Reiterate how many FGCs took place for whatever reason. The 2022 rates of care applications per 10,000 children were Herefordshire 18.5, Statistical Neighbours 10.74, England 9.6. The low number of FGCs is disappointing, as they are recommended by statutory guidance, and the Government Commission independent review recommended mandating them. Further Council's guidance, they should be convened when children are on the threshold or subject to care proceedings, etc. The family rights group, etc., could be commissioned for the rapid routine use of FGCs, which would soon recoup its costs and save money by less care proceedings and children in care. In principle, would the Cabinet support this, including allocating budget and setting target dates?
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you very much. I do understand that family group conferences are recommended, and I understand why. I think they are a really important tool for supporting children and families, and I hope that we will do them, and I will be following this up, and we are exploring it. It is a very specific model, and before we bring it in, I'm not sure that we've actually got everything exactly in place, ready to bring it in, because when we do it, we've got to do it properly. But the purpose of it, as people know, is to get together members of the extended family, neighbours, friends, to really explore, make sure that we're exploring every possibility, every option for the child. And the fact that we're not doing the particular model that's called family group conferences doesn't mean that we're not doing that, because I agree that that is really important. But I will keep pushing on this, and I'll keep you up to date with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toynbee. Moving then on, item 5, to receive questions from councillors. We have 2 questions. Responses have been published. And the question is whether there are any supplemental questions. The first questioner was Councillor Milne.
Ms Leader, and he sent a written supplementary question. He thanks the Cabinet member for their response and says, I accept stonework is mentioned, although the town hall is largely brick and terracotta, and boiler, which, with how many people does it take to change a light bulb, efficiency is attended by no less than 8 contractors. But the response doesn't answer my original question, which was for a breakdown identifying the works. The words improvement, associated and capital are not identifiers of the works. Can you provide this information, please?
Councillor Davies.
Yes, happy to. We'll provide it after the meeting.
Thank you. And then Councillor Jansen.
I believe she does have a supplementary question, Leader, and she's on the call, so she can deliver it in person.
Thank you.
Hello, yes, thank you so much for including my question. And this is my supplementary. Thank you for reading the reply thank you for the reply to my question. Well, reading through the answer, I was reminded of a politician's typical responses to questions posed to them on the Today programme. doesn't answer anything. Are we here looking at a potentially similar situation to the one that we face in Ledbury? Here, our young people, Lias, were evicted from their drop-in centre in 2019 and still have nowhere where they can meet, despite there being a building built as a youth centre by Herefordshire Council in Ledbury, and yet is currently unavailable to our Ledbury youth. So my question again is this St Owen Street house for sale? Why is it for sale? And if so, why was a suitable location not found to house Your Voice Matters before this decision was made? Also bearing in mind, we have lost the services, the young have lost the services of Know Your Wrong Door in Hereford. And why is a review being undertaken only now? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's come from that the building's for sale. If you're talking about the paper that we were talking about with regards to the town hall, etc., and the asset review, those are the conversations ongoing with Children's Services to make sure that the accommodation that we have for our young people satisfies all of what they require. So we don't want people being forced into a property where they've got to fit themselves around it. We want to have something for them where it can have absolutely everything for them. So that's part of the review that's ongoing. And just to touch on the Ledbury, I've been involved for about 2 or 3 years in trying to secure that particular issue in Ledbury. And it's good for me to revisit it now to find out, and I'll speak to Councillor Harvey, who is the ward member for that particular area.
Yes. Can I just say that Your Voice Matters have been told that it is for sale?
What we'll have to do is take that away from the meeting today and contact them to find out exactly what's happening with that, because it's not on the market at the moment, as far as I'm aware. Just for clarification, section 151.
No, it's not on the market.
No, yeah, people need an update on that.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Moving then on to item 6, which is reports from scrutiny committees. There are no reports from this meeting. So then moving on to item 7, which is certainly the substantive item for this meeting. And I'll just, before I begin, just to remind members of the advice given by the monitoring officer not to raise openly in a public setting matters relating to the conduct or capability of an officer, whether they are present or previous employees. This is a long-standing tradition in public service, as an officer has no means of responding to such criticism in public. Also, such comment could bring the council and the member into disrepute and expose the council to employment litigation. This session is a very important one, not one where I wish to stifle in any way group leaders' discussion. The Constitution does not place any limit on the number of questions that group leaders may ask, but I propose asking the questions which they have to be replied to altogether at the end of each group session, group leader's statement, rather than being dealt with one by one. The asking of questions and the statements is an opportunity for group leaders to give their views of their group and also ask questions rather than enter into a debate. So I now, if I may, pass over to Councillor Thornby to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting to you, Cabinet colleagues, this report on the Ofsted Inspection of our Children's Services, which was published last week, for you to note. We also have a recommendation that we note comments and recommendations for the council meeting tomorrow and receive updated reports of actions taken in response to the judgment. And a plan of action in response to the Ofsted judgment is being drawn up, which will come to us for approval before being submitted to Ofsted in December. I know you've all read the inspection report thoroughly and probably several times. And I know that however many times we read it, it doesn't get any easier to read. It concluded that the overall effectiveness of our children's services is inadequate. And I totally accept this judgment. It's a criticism not only of our children's services, but of the whole council. And I know it's of great concern to all of us. I want to take this opportunity to again publicly apologise to children and young people and their families who have not received the support that they needed when they needed it. The Department of Education has issued us, Herefordshire Council, with a statutory direction, which is in Appendix B. And the key elements of this direction are set out in paragraph 1 of this report. They have appointed Eleanor Brazil as our Commissioner for Children's Services. We have a duty to cooperate with her, and I'm confident that our working with Eleanor will benefit Herefordshire's children and families. And as the leader said earlier, Eleanor is with us today, and I'm very pleased to have her here. Welcome, Eleanor. So if it's all right, I'll take you through a few of the main points of the report and then hand over to Eleanor to explain a bit about her role before we open it up. Is that okay?
Yes.
Over the past year, we as a Cabinet have been briefed frequently by the Chief Executive and Director of Children's Services, who've been very open about the challenges, the current and historical, that they're facing as they work on improvement. None of us has been complacent, and this week marks another step in our facing reality, gaining more clarity about what we need to do and welcoming extra support. It's clear to me that you are as determined as I am to put things right, and it's been good to have one-to-one chats with some of you over the past week. Some of the main concerns of this report are poor practice, drift and delay, the impact of staff turnover, and a lack of management grip over the years. Another concern has been the risks that arise when agencies don't work well enough together. Some immediate concerns were raised during the inspection, and in these cases and in the weeks since, the leadership team acted fast and agreed with the priorities for focus, many of which had already been identified and which we'd already incorporated into our existing improvement plan. They took immediate action to increase capacity where it was needed and to strengthen our multi-agency safeguarding hub and other frontline services for children and young people. They met with senior leaders of other agencies where a multi-agency response was required and reviewed all cases identified as being potentially at risk. While the inspectors were with us in July, they met many dedicated and committed social workers and managers doing their best, and they acknowledged their dedication in very difficult circumstances. They reported that performance reporting is improving from a very low base, as is the use of information coming from case audits. They also welcome the fact that we have now secured a permanent leadership team, which is already making a significant difference, as you can all feel. Partnerships and multi-agency arrangements are mentioned in 3 of the 9 key areas for improvement identified by inspectors. As the issues identified in this report do not all lie solely with children's social care services. As you can see, most of these 9 key areas for improvement are very broad and general, which is an indication of how fundamental systems and structures and foundations that should have been well established for years have not been in place. There's a limit how much progress can be made in an organisation where the foundations to build on are not in place. We know that this situation has been many years in the making. The broad nature of the areas of improvement also remind us that to be effective, the plan will require a whole council response and a multi-agency response. And that is what is already well underway. A lot of progress has been made over the past few months. In particular, we've recruited more social workers, we've strengthened our multi-agency safeguarding hub, we've increased supervision, and we've reduced caseloads. And as you know, reducing caseloads for social workers is absolutely essential so that they can spend more time with children and families, because this work is all about relationships. I believe that this Ofsted report is a useful document for us as councillors, and I trust you will find the background and information in this report helpful. Now it's time for us to look forward roll our sleeves up even further and step up the momentum. I'm looking forward to working very closely with Eleanor over the next 3 months, as I'm sure you are too. And I'll now ask her to say a few words about her role.
Thank you for the introduction, Councillor Toynbee. My role as Commissioner is outlined in the direction which is included in the papers for Cabinet today. So I won't go through that, but we'll say a bit about the reality of what that means and how I will go about doing the role as it's described.
I'm sorry, Chairman, but could we ask the officer to speak more loudly so that we can hear back here? Thank you.
Is that better?
I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay. So the role of Commissioner is described in the papers, and as you are aware, it's an appointment by the Secretary of State for Education, and the requirement is for me to report back to the Secretary of State within a period of 3 to 4 months. I think because publication of the Ofsted report was slightly delayed because of the Queen's funeral, the reporting back might be more towards the end of December rather than the middle of December. I think one of the first things to say is this is not the first Commissioner role I've done on behalf of the Secretary of State. And I'm very clear that the position that Herefordshire is in some respects similar to other local authorities who have had judgments that their children's services are inadequate. But the circumstances and the context here will also be unique to Herefordshire. And so I come with no assumptions about what the solution for Herefordshire might be. Of course, there's a limited range of options, but first and foremost, my role is about supporting the council and its partners to improve things for your most vulnerable children at pace. And the lead members talked about increasing the momentum. And indeed, that is a very key aspect of what needs to happen over the next few months. I'm also very clear that improving children's services that have been, are in the position that your services are in is not a matter of a quick fix. It's not something that will happen over a short period of a few months, but indeed people talk about improving children's services taking a period of 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the circumstances. However, what I will be looking at is the direction of progress, the trajectory of movement, what is actually happening, and are some key things beginning to shift. And what is equally, if not more important, is what's happening to children and families who are newly coming to the service for support and help, so that we don't compound the situation by getting it wrong again for those children and their families who are at the early stage of seeking support. At the same time, I'll also be very interested in looking at the remedial work that the service will be taking in relation to children for whom their experience with the council has not been as good as it should have been, and whether that's been addressed. There are many aspects to improving children's services, from the role of leadership, the effectiveness of supervision, the way in which partners work with the council, to support children, the way in which services are organised and the systems that support frontline staff to deliver a good service. So there is no one thing that will make the difference here, as indeed in other places. But there are things that do help improve the way. What we're talking about is the quality of practice, and there are things that we know that do make a difference. And that's what I'll be supporting the council with. In order to do the role, I will visit Herefordshire when I can. I don't live very locally, so that can't be as frequently as I would like. I am contracted to work for 2 days a week by the DFE, and some of that I will obviously do reading background reports, talking to individuals, attending forums where business as usual is happening, and it's important to see how well that works. It's not a passive role. I don't just sit back and observe what's happening. I will want to take the opportunity to comment, to suggest, and to put Herefordshire in touch with other places that have faced similar issues and have found solutions that work. I'm very, very clear, as I know the officers and members are here, that Herefordshire needs help to do this, that isn't in a position to make the changes needed by itself, and indeed has already secured some help from the Local Government Association and from other local authorities such as Telford and Wrekin, who deliver outstanding services. And I will certainly want to support the council and its partners in securing the kind of help that really makes a difference. I don't think there's anything else I want to say at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Eleanor, very much. Right, so any comments in particular from Cabinet members? Mr. Harrington.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Toynbee and Eleanor as well for your explanations. In sort of layman's terms, Councillor Toynbee, we've inherited some historical problems. We've also then not dealt with things as well as we should have in the last few months in our improvement plan, and we now have a period of time up until December to satisfy the DFE that we have the capacity to carry forward the plans that we have put in place and the extra funding that we have here. The most important thing being for us that we have to get this right. Nothing else counts, quite frankly, in terms of politics or policies or anything else other than getting this right. And I just want to, get your assurance, and you have our assurance that that is the focus. But is my understanding correct in that sort of timeline?
Absolutely, and I know we're really ambitious about that. We're going to get on with it.
Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Toynbee. I too accept this Ofsted report. It is a damning report, and we actually knew it was coming this way, didn't we? I'd like to assure residents that we are doing and tackling these issues that we've identified as quickly and as competently as we can. In the Adults Directorate, we have already started progress on an all ages commissioning programme. And actually, ironically, tomorrow we're interviewing for a service director. So somebody strong to push that forward. Throughout that all age commissioning, we are supplying additional officers to the transitions team, which is a major concern of mine, so that we can flatten out that rocky road from children's into adults. And we have appointed, I think it is 4 more officers to help with that. As always, I offer my support to Cabinet members who are having additional work, and Councillor Toynbee, I am here for you.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Any other comments? Councillor Davis.
Yes, thanks for the introduction, Councillor Toynbee, and Ellen, thanks for that explanation. I think it'd be really helpful for people who are watching to understand what your role is. I suspect that the sickness that I felt in my stomach when I read the report was shared by anybody that's read it. But ultimately, it's not about how I feel, it's about the children and families and all of the people involved in their lives, how they must feel being part of a system that is inadequate. I suspect I'm the same as most Cabinet members. When you sit there and look at your own portfolio area and go, what actually have I done with regards to children's services and making sure that they are our #1 priority? And I would absolutely accept the report that says that we haven't done enough. And I've taken it as certain parts of my portfolio area. So, for example, our social value, looking at the money that comes in from big contracts and small contracts into the council, where we can put a portion of that money towards certain projects and priorities for the council. And I will take that away, that children's services should be that #1 in our social value. So what can those big contractors, what can they provide, either as experiences, work placements, etc., for young people? So I will absolutely take that away. The other one is, obviously we've all heard about the Stronger Towns money being finally agreed today. And some of those projects are all about how do we make Herefordshire Hereford City specifically, a great place to live and work. And I see that as key and critical to certainly the retention and recruitment issues within Herefordshire. I know Cabinet members, we've had a discussion around how do we support social workers in our communities to come to Herefordshire. Well, one thing is to look at key worker accommodation, and that's something that I really do think that we need to act on fast, and Councillor Tyler about our housing options. So I think that that's another priority that we need to look at together. So I think lots of internal thinking, and I'm sure this is what everybody else is experiencing. But one of my biggest concerns is that we don't get to the point fast enough. And I want to ask Councillor Toynbee and potentially Darryl Freeman around how are we going to monitor this? Previously, we've had year-long plans, sometimes 3-year plans, saying we're going to get to this point. Well, with all the will in the world, if your pressure is not on all of the time, how are we going to be assured that we're reaching those end targets? So I just wondered what will be different for us this time round.
Yes, good question. Yeah, obviously I have heard from various people, we've heard all this before, what's different now? I think lots of things are different now. I think we've got stronger ambition, we've got stronger leadership, we have proactively reached out for external help, and we now have external help from the DFE. We're more focused, I think, and there's much more openness. So part of that openness is keeping track, having really clear measures of where we want to be by when. We as a cabinet, really keeping our eye on that, keeping the pressure on from the point of view of accountability. And I know that also coming up in October, I think we're going to start having all member briefings. So it's not just us, but all members, because obviously everybody cares. That's what we're all doing. We all have a duty to make sure that this works. So I know that all members will want to be kept up to date, and we're going to start having briefings in October.
Thanks for that response. And I just wonder if I can come back with some of the places that we learn the most and where we nurture is in our very own communities. And I wonder if all of those briefings can actually be extended to our talk community parishes. So that when we have that two-way conversation to continue in our communities as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, it's two ways. So it's not just us updating people on where we are, but you know, how can we take services out to the community? How can we take services out to children and families where they need it, when they need it, as soon as they need it? And I think Talk Community has really got huge potential for that. And, you know, it's still in, you know, in the overall scheme, it's still in fairly early stages, but I think the timing is good from the point of view of this plan. And I think there's huge potential there, because children and families, they are our communities, but we're all one community. It's not, children's services aren't something separate from our community. So I'm really looking forward to getting, and I know that some of our senior staff in Talk Community are doing some good work on that. So we've got to make it real, not just aspirations, but real. What does it actually mean? This is your village. You're worried about a child. What do you do? Who do you go to? Yeah, great potential there, and more openness, which we need. Yeah.
And final question, sorry. Just the point around openness and transparency. Sometimes for the public, the only time really that they get that openness and transparency is through coming to meetings such as this and seeing them online and them being reported on. And I just want to understand, how often will this Ofsted and the improvement be coming to Cabinet? Will it be every Cabinet briefing that we will be getting an update, just so that if people are viewing and want to come along, that they're aware?
I think that is maybe for us to decide. So, yeah, we'll decide on that, and then we'll publicise it. Yeah, yeah.
Every meeting makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
If I can add, thank you for the question, Councillor Davies. The other element of the public scrutiny of this is that Ofsted will conduct quarterly monitoring visits. That first visit is likely to be in the spring next year, and then quarterly thereafter. Those reports, certainly from the second monitoring visit onwards, are published on the Ofsted website. So again, that's another very public and transparent way of tracking our progress, and we would expect to be bringing those monitoring visits reports to Cabinet and to Children's Scrutiny, of course.
Thank you for that. And I suppose that's that plea really to anybody that's viewing or has an interest, which we all should have in the children's services in Herefordshire, that please do ask Cabinet questions, please do ask for council questions, please scrutinise us as a Cabinet and as a council, because we need that.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to echo some of our thoughts as well, because once I read this report, I was very, very sad because of everything we've done. You know, worked as a Cabinet to make sure we are trying to do the best for our children's services. To shed a tear at that time is not good, and I feel a failure as a corporate parent. In terms of the report of paragraph 18, it states its serious and potential impact of this intervention cannot be overstated. It can't be. And we all need to work together now as a whole council, as well as multi-agencies. And I always say about how partners working not very well together. And we need to make sure we do that right across the board of anything that affects anybody. You know, and it also states then, as Eleanor will have to advise us at the end of her examination, what could there be an alternative governance arrangement and what else could happen outside the control of council. We don't want that to happen. We have to keep the children's services with Herefordshire Council. And I pick up on what Councillor Davies has spoken about, key worker delivery. We are looking at our houseline, the pipeline delivery. We've also got the Talk Community, but people are still saying, what is Talk Community about? We have to go out there. We have to tell people about Talk Community. It's where we can provide those services. We can connect with children and families that need our support. So I would like to say to every single member listening today that they work with their communities, identify services that people may require, and help us to promote Talk Communities in the wider aspect of the council. And I'd just like to say that Talk Community are looking at a new website which will focus more on engaging children, to make sure they know where to go as well to find those services. So that's so important for our children and wellbeing as well. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Chowns.
Thanks, Leader.
I'd really like to warmly welcome Eleanor Brazil, and I'd like to thank you for your support. As you say, we recognise we need more support, and it's really valuable to have that. I'd like to thank Diana for her introduction of the report. It's a very, very sobering read, and I'm sure for none of us more so than everyone who's been working so very hard over the last 18 months to try to turn things around, and to recognise that there is not enough to show for that very hard work yet. And I would like to thank Daryl and Paul and all of your colleagues within the service for your very hard work to try to turn things around, and everything that you are now doing and will be doing more and better in the future, because that is the only direction that we can be going. Likewise for Diana. And as a cabinet and as a whole council, we have committed time, energy, and crucially finance to try to ensure that our children's services are the best possible for children. It is sobering to recognise that we haven't yet achieved that. We know that we need to do more and better. I think we all share the vision that children's services are so successful in supporting children and families when they most need it, that we're able to focus more of our energy kind of at the start of when people become vulnerable, rather than at picking up the pieces when things become very, very difficult. We want and need to become a place in Herefordshire where social workers want to come and work, where they thrive, where they have the support, the management, the supervision to stay. We recognise that recruitment and retention is a big challenge. It's a national issue, but we need to do more on that in Herefordshire so that we build that permanent workforce of people who are the frontline workers, who are crucial to the delivery of that improvement. And I want to again thank and recognise the work of all those who are so dedicated and hardworking. I'm sure it's very hard for our staff also to read this report. We need fantastic permanent staff. We're determined to provide that support at the political level that you need to do your jobs and to keep children safe. I've used the word sobering. Reading the report makes me feel very sobered, but it also makes me feel very, very determined that we must turn this around. And I've taken some hope in the last week or so from reading case studies of authorities that have done that have turned things around. We've said for the last 12, 18 months, we're on a 3-year improvement journey. We're still got a long way to go on that, but with the support of our staff and all councillors and external support like Eleanor Brazil, I'm very hopeful that we can do that. And a key thing that came out of the Ofsted report is that we need to hear the voices of children more strongly. And for all of that, that is a really important kind of reminder and something for us all to bear in mind as we drive that forward. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman.
Just one quick follow-up. Yeah. So just it's a practical question really, Darryl, because one of the concerns that we've had coming through in the past is people not getting responses, timely responses to queries, and whereas that's understandable in other departments where we're suffering from lack of funding, it's not something that's acceptable in children's services. And I talked to you previously about whether we brought in extra PA staff to help with the first point of contact, to make sure that anyone who rings in or any agency that's trying to contact are able to get someone at any time of day or night and get a response, and that person then might follow up with the social worker if the social worker isn't directly available. Could you just explain what you said about the extra support staff that you were potentially bringing in?
Thank you for the question. So just to be clear, in terms of out of hours, day or night, in the evenings and at weekends, members of the public should contact the emergency duty team, or if they're particularly concerned about the safety of a child, contact the police. During office hours, obviously our inquiries come to the MASH, but you're quite right that we've talked at some length recently about the additional support for social workers. So as part of the investment that Cabinet agreed at the end of March, that was for 15 additional social work, 15 additional business support posts. We are partway through now recruiting to those posts. We are reconfiguring, redesigning our Director of Support Hub, which is the business support for the teams, so that more teams have more support going forward. We're just in the process of introducing and implementing that at the minute, and also redesigning some of the systems by which members of the public might leave a message, and we make sure that we follow those up. So we're partway through the process to do that, and really pleased with the progress that we're making with regard to recruitment to business support colleagues.
Thank you, Darryl. I'll now turn to group leaders, beginning with Councillor James.
Sorry, I'm just unmuting. Leader, just a point. This doesn't make speaking online, this doesn't make very good viewing for the public if they're watching this. All we see is a distant figures, none of which we can recognize who's speaking and when.
I think that's going to do with that. Members of the public are able to come to Calais and can be here if they wish.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but I think it does need improving. It's very bad. Can I say a general point? I think we're going to go through this all tomorrow, and I'm not going to repeat myself. And what I'm going to say will be saved mostly for tomorrow, because we have a large agenda, and some of it is relative to this as well, to this particular item. But it is a very sad day, very, very sad day. And it's all summed up, I think, on the first page, the first two paragraphs, in fact, when the first sentence, which is a bombshell, maybe a bombshell for some, but I think for some of the families is not unexpected. Children and young people in Herefordshire are not protected from harm, which is probably the most damning assessment I think I've ever seen in a paper like this. And the quality of impact and work practice has significantly deteriorated since the last judgment inspection in June 2018, as well as following in July 21, noted further deterioration in the quality of services, resulting in poor action being required in a number of cases. We've talked about, having committees and improvement boards, etc. But what needs to be changed is the culture that exists within children's services. That has been dire. The families feel very angry about what's been happening over the last few years. You'll probably see it tomorrow. Many of them are going to be very angry about the way in which we've reacted to this particular situation over the last few years. But further than that, I think I think we need to leave it till tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor James. I don't know whether Councillor Toynbee wishes to respond to that.
Yes, I understand how Councillor James feels. As far as going back to the 2018 Ofsted inspection is concerned, I agree that jumps out, that word deterioration. And as we know, Ofsted's main concern in 2018 was leadership and governance. And I think until changes were made there was a limit to how much improvement could be made. So I'm very pleased that we now have fresh senior leadership in place, which is making a huge difference. And of course, we know that it goes back further back than 2018 as well. As Councillor James knows, there have been issues for far too long and issues that haven't been tackled when they should have been. So I'm glad that we're tackling them now. As far as families are concerned, I have very frequent conversations with families, and I know that every family who is has concerns or complaints at the moment is in very frequent communication with our staff and are being dealt with fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toynbee. Turning then to Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Just on behalf of the Conservative group, would just like to draw everyone's attention to paragraph 41, and it says of the Ofsted report, the recent Ofsted report, it says, inspectors met with many dedicated and committed social workers and managers who are trying to do their best for the children. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that paragraph because it shows that people are working hard and really trying to provide a good service. And we thank them for their dedication and their determination. The 2018 report has been mentioned, and the 2018 report said children identified as at risk of immediate harm receive prompt and responsive intervention, ensuring that they are safeguarded. So, it's in stark contrast to the first sentence of this report, which says children and young people in Herefordshire are not protected from harm. Now, I note that paragraph 11 of the report says that this statement that Ofsted makes is deeply concerning, but it should not be interpreted as meaning that all or significant numbers of children are at risk or are unprotected. Well, I have to push back on that. You can say that in a report, but unless you follow that up with assurances and explanations as to why you come to that conclusion, then we would like to challenge that assumption that's made in the report. And if you look at the Ofsted report of 2022, it says that children are not protected because, and then, well, if you were to insert the word because, you would then read the first paragraph and it would say why they believe that children are at harm, children in Herefordshire are at harm. So I would push back on that paragraph 11, and I think that needs some justification and some explanation. And I think it would be really helpful if that is being put in a report, that explanation is provided for our debate tomorrow, which I think would be helpful. The one specific question that we have is that in the Ofsted report, it says that senior leaders were aware of many, but not all of the inadequacies and the impact on children until this inspection. So our question is, given the improvement journey and the investment and all of the hard work, why weren't senior leaders aware of all of the inadequacies until the inspection this time round? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lester. I completely understand your points. As far as paragraph 11 is concerned about, I think what we've got in the report here is in there to reassure members, because that is alarming, that first sentence, as you say. This is to reassure members that action was taken immediately, that it didn't refer to a blanket concerns about all children. It was an overview, it was a summary of the key issues of concern. But I'm very happy to expand on that tomorrow as you requested. And since the review, since the visit, the Ofsted visit, all the cases that were raised have been audited and reviewed and revisited again. So I can give you assurances that all the cases that were raised have been dealt with properly. We will go on reviewing those, and it'll all be part of the reports that come to scrutiny and council. As far as being aware of many but not all of the issues, I know that part of that relates to other agencies that we work with, but I don't know if Darryl would like to expand on that.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Lester. So among the issues that we've reported to, Cabinet and Council in the past was that we were building almost from scratch a new performance management framework. So when I joined the Council at the end of last year, much of our data was Excel spreadsheets and Word documents, tables. So it wasn't accurate and up-to-date data. We spent an awful lot of time and resources on developing that. When Ofsted came in July, they pointed out that we had identified many of the issues that they raised during the inspection. There were still some areas of our performance framework and our line of sight that were still not fully developed. And again, if Ofsted were to revisit us, next week or next month, they would see a much expanded performance framework and a line of sight that is developing month on month at the moment. So it was about very much building the infrastructure on which improvement can be delivered. And again, they recognise that in the report. It is an iterative process over the last 9 months. And at the point when they came in July, we still didn't have a full line of sight on everything. Apologies, I've got a sore throat, so I'm a little bit croaky right now.
Thank you very much. I'll move on then, I think, if I may, to Councillor Fagan. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. On behalf of the Greens, we accept with humility this judgment on children's services. We have utterly failed the children of this county, and that is not something that any of us can take lightly. So we welcome the support that we will get from Eleanor Brazil to help us turn this around. I think a lot of us hoped that the improvement plan would sort of see us into a stage of improvement, and obviously there's a lot more work to do. I think we all know that difficult times are coming with all the sorts of crises that families are facing in terms of cost of living and mental health, and it's absolutely crucial that we make sure that our response to this is robust. And those of us that sit on the Children's Scrutiny Committee are absolutely determined to ensure that our scrutiny activities are properly targeted and effective, so that we can truly say that we've made a difference to the lives of children in the county. So there's not much more that we can say other than to accept this and to try our very best to improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilding.
Sorry, Chair, for taking so long. I had to press a couple of buttons there. Yeah, well, I would echo what Councillor Fagan just said. We're all terribly upset by all this. We think the situation's unacceptable. We recognise that there's been a lot of hard work done to try and put it right, but the situation is really difficult. So we welcome the help and the input of Eleanor Brazil, and just hope she can help us turn this around. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wilding. I think I speak on behalf of all the Cabinet when I say that we are deeply saddened by the report from Ofsted. It is clear that the children in the care of Herefordshire Council are being let down. Prior to the inspection, we've been given a strong message from the DCS. The outcome of the report was likely that we would be found inadequate, but the extent of the shortcomings came as a shock. To hear that children told inspectors that they were angry with the local authority is not something that any council leader wants to read. Following the court judgments, Cabinet and Council agreed certain actions. While some progress has been made as a result of those actions and recommendations, in hindsight, it seems they were based on a limited assessment of the situation and have therefore been much less impactful than we had been led to believe would be the case. What, as has been asked in this session, is different this time? What assurance can councillors and the people of Herefordshire have that things will be different? Councillor Toynbee has mentioned how it might be different. For me, there are two or three things which are different. I think, first of all, the Ofsted report provides indisputable proof that our services are inadequate and in a worse state than we had thought. This is a reality check. Second, despite all that has been going on since we came into office in 2019, we have across the board in this council delivered new leadership. The 2018 Ofsted report, which covered the period 2014 to 2018, stated that leadership was inadequate. The same in 2022 for the period from 2018 to 2022. The difference now is that leadership throughout the officer corps has changed, beginning with the appointment of a new chief executive in May 2021, followed by the departure of the previous DCS and the appointment of new Director of Children's Services, Darryl, in January 2022. Since Darryl took office, he's begun to build his own team of professionals, and we now have 2 permanent service directors, an essential next step as recognised by Ofsted. I have been leader of this council since May 2019. I regret that it has taken 2 years to get a team in place capable of grasping this particular nettle, a nettle which has been around since the period 2014 to 18, and if some councillors are to be believed, well before that. With sound, stable leadership, the many committed social workers who work for our community will be well supported and properly valued. We are all determined to ensure that our staff receive the management support, the resources and the equipment they need so that they are able to do the very best for our children and families in need and at risk. With this will follow better outcomes for children in our care, as well as a much greater satisfaction for our children. We all, elected members and staff, want children in our county and in our care to have the best possible opportunities as they start out in life. My cabinet colleagues and I welcome the appointment of the Children's Commissioner, Anna Brazil, and we look forward to working with her to achieve the best for the children in our care. And so if there's another reason why things are different this time, it is with the appointment of Eleanor, who is going to be rigorous in the way that she works with us and coaching us as she goes along. As you've heard from Cabinet members, this is a whole Cabinet commitment. We are already doing much to try to make this a whole council that is committed to doing the best for children. And I look for the collective support from the whole of the council and for their continued challenge as we make this a reality. I may now put the recommendations to the Cabinet. First recommendation is the Cabinet receive and note the Ofsted Inspection report. Secondly, that we note any comments and recommendations from the council meeting to be held tomorrow, and that these be considered prior to the submission of the action plan to Ofsted by a date in December. Thirdly, the Cabinet receive updated reports until further notice of actions taken and improvements against the inspection report, and we'll take on board the suggestion we should have monthly reporting. And finally, the action plan, once finalised, be approved by Cabinet for submission to Ofsted by the 20th of December, or such a date in December. So can I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 8 in the agenda, which is the future of the Town Hall and number 10 St Owen Street, Hereford. Purpose is to agree which of the presented recommendations, if any, offer a preferred way forward regarding the future of the Town Hall and 10 St Owen Street, and to advise Cabinet to propose alternative recommendations for further development and consideration. I think in this paper there are 3 possible alternatives, and I'll leave Councillor Davies to present.
Excuse me, Chairman, to go.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, anybody who is to enhance it. So, Councillor Tyler and Councillor Tonby. Thank you for that prompt. Councillor Davies.
There's just one slight amendment to this, Leader, in that one of the comments which I believe says subject to agreement of heads of town by 31st December 2002 to transfer the freehold of the Town Hall and number 10 St Owen Street to Hereford City Council. with the transfer to be completed by 31st of October 2023. We'd like to add in after Hereford City Council or its nominee, because what we don't want to do is put the City Council in a position where they are forced into a situation from this decision today. So I'm not going to give too long a introduction to this. This is a culmination of the work that came out of the scrutiny recommendations over a year ago. So in that time, we've done the asset review looking into the buildings within Hereford City. Shortly to come before Cabinet will be the decision around the Shire Hall, but it's important that first we deal with the Town Hall decision. So before you've got the paper with the options for that, I would personally like to thank all of the City Council members, particularly the Task and Finish group that I've been working with, and also the clerk to the City Council, Steve Cowie, who's in the room today. So I would just like to say that this isn't about tying anybody down to anything today. This is about us putting in writing the discussions that we're having. I'd like to take questions.
Any questions, Cabinet members? I see.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got several different recommendations. For me personally, the preferable one is to try and find a way of setting up a mechanism or a trust which allows the City Council to remain in its historic building for the future. It's a building with much history, much impact, hasn't been kept in the best of conditions, and we need to make sure that we are able to give it to whoever is going to be running it, but certainly allowing the City Council to remain there. Yeah, I've lost the point that I was trying to raise. I'll quit while I'm ahead.
I think that's debatable whether you're ahead, but we will go.
I'll set my bit.
Yeah, one of the things that we're discussing on here, and I think what you're referring to, Councillor Harrington, is the fact that there are three proposals here. So the first one, the options available to us are to, subject to the agreement, we transfer the freehold of the Town Hall and St Owen Street to Hereford City Council and all their nominees. The second one is to dispose of the freehold of the Town Hall and St Owen Street on the open market, or invest in and retain the Town Hall campus. And just to be clear, my recommendation would be that we go for option 9.
And Chair, I have remembered what I was going to say. It was essentially just to wonder how that mechanism would work in terms of how the trust might be set up, Councillor.
Yeah, we purposely kept this at a high level, and the reason being that we want to allow the City Council and whoever else determines to work in a trust, if that's the model that they wish to go down to select that themselves, because there are a number of options available to people with regards to trusts or regards to asset transfers, etc. And the next few months are going to be about supporting the City Council with regards to what avenue they want to go down with that. So there could be a whole heap of them. So you've got Heritage Trust, you've got lots of different CICs, etc. So the importance is that we leave the options as available as possible for the City Council.
Councillor Chance.
Thanks for this report, Councillor Davies, and yeah, for the record, I support your proposal to go with the first option. I think it's an excellent initiative to enable the primary users of the building to own the building and to empower them to take it forward. I think we've got a really inspiring example of a historic building in Hereford, in the museum building, that we're now taking forward as a project to redo and retrofit, make very energy efficient and so forth. And I would love to see the town council able to take forward that sort of innovative work with the building. It's always a struggle to balance the fantastic heritage and history that we've got with buildings that are then potentially quite difficult to run in the modern world.
But I think the principle of empowering the primary users of the building to take it forward is a really positive one.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. Oh dear, another thing that's a long time coming, isn't it? Sadly, this building of historical significance has come to such a poor state of affairs. Again, I would agree that we should go for recommendation A, number 1. This is because Herefordsians know that building and they want that building, and it would be a really big asset for the City Council. And the more that we can do to facilitate this, I think the better. Thank you very much.
With that, there's also the undertaking that both councils, so County Council and City Council, are under the same financial pressures. And what we're trying to do is say, look, that we are open to you creating a trust, we're open to you doing whatever needs to be done to ensure that this building remains in public use, because that is what we've heard loud and clear from the scrutiny meetings, from people writing in, from some of the press articles that there have been around it, that people really do hold the town hall dear to their hearts. And it's worth remembering the town hall was never a county council asset, it always belonged to the City Council. So that's why it's right and proper that they are first to be able to try and withhold it.
Thank you. So Councillor Davis, the third option, so invest and retain that town hall campus. Why don't you think we should spend some money on it up to standard?
So in an ideal world, we would. We've just heard before at the agenda item before about the colossal task we have in front of us with regards to children's services and the amount of money that is going to be required in order to turn that around. I think even the money that we've been putting into it and the extra money is not going to come close to what's required. And we have 2 buildings, one opposite each other, both requiring the same amount of work. And that's one of the reasons why scrutiny said, can you look at them together? So we've looked at them together and said, are there any feasible options here? For the town hall, the City Council, it belongs to them. And also the other part of it is that they've got plans for what they'd like to do in there. And we don't have that same situation with the Shire Hall. Now, we may take that decision, given the gravity of the situation at the moment with children's services, that we don't invest in the Shire Hall as well, and that's a decision for another day. But we need to make a decision on the town hall. And I don't think, even if we were to invest in it, we would get away from this debate, which is who should own the town hall and should it be Herefordshire County Council? And I'm afraid I'm very clear that I think it shouldn't belong to Hereford County Council.
Thank you very much. Now to group leaders, first of all, Councillor James. Councillor James, do we still have you? Yeah. Yes. Councillor James, well, I'll move on to Councillor Lester and then come back to Councillor James again.
Oh, Councillor James, would you like to go first? You're back.
Yeah, sorry, I pressed. I didn't realise I was on video. Yeah, it's a very sad day. What's happening, and it's happening all over the country, whereby community assets are being sort of not sold off, but passing out and going to rather strange organisations sometimes. But the important thing is this is part of the heritage of the city. It's part of the heritage of the county as well, for that matter. Everything within the county is part of all our heritage. And, you know, it must retain being a public building for the people of this city and county. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. So I'll then to Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Yes, the Scrutiny Committee debated this issue at length. It was August last year now, gosh, time flies. But we gave it a good thrashing out, and we were assisted by those who have a great interest in the building, the town council. And some of the issues that were raised were to do with the state of the building, and a lot of concern was raised at the committee about certain parts of the building that were suffering from damp and needed immediate action, and that was something that we were most concerned about. And unfortunately, the report doesn't go into the detail of how that was addressed. But you know, if it's the decision that it should be considered as a community asset that should be handed over to the town council, then, you know, the Conservative group accept that would be the view. But I think the criticism we would have is that that's a financial implication for the council, and this report doesn't really reflect on the financial situation. There's a cursory glance at paragraph 11 about what the council does believe the building could and couldn't be used for. And it's not very comprehensive, and one wonders whether you can make a reasoned decision as to whether to proceed, whichever option you take, without more detail about the financial implications and exploring further how the building could be utilized. Because you know, as we understand it, the town council are currently a tenant there. And they could continue to be a tenant whilst the council makes money out of the building in various ways that it could explore. And it just seems to be a little bit vague as to what thought has been given to see if this council could, you know, maximize its asset whilst still trying to help the city council have its historic base. And you know, one thinks about how you use public buildings. They could be used as conference centers, they could be used as for wedding venues, you know, big events like that, which is money making. And more detail about that may be able to give the cabinet more of a foundation on which to make such a financial decision.
That's a date. I'm sure you'd like to respond to that one.
Yeah, happy to answer that. That's kind of the point of the report. The point of the report is to say up until December this year, we'll be debating heads of terms, etc. So what's really important is that we cannot say, for example, staff that are currently in the town hall, whether or not that's part of the plans for the trust, so whether or not they would want to rely on staff and the income coming from that area. So it would be thoughtless if we put in figures that we have no idea on. So that's why we've got a short time scale up until December to have those conversations with the City Council, all their nominees, to work out exactly what is required from them, what parts they may need, what parts they might not need, and then that's when the decision will be made. So it purposely doesn't have that financial information in there, because remember, this is just an agreement to enter into discussions. This is not an agreement now to transfer. There are a number of things required before we would do that.
Yes, can I just come back on that, really? Your proposal is to entertain that and two other options. And one of those options is to invest in and retain the town hall campus. Well, if you're going to make a sound decision as to not do that, surely you would need more financial details as to what you're potentially not exploring, given that there's there's potential there for the council to earn money.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that this has come to us. I believe there's been a number of reports before that talked about it. This is a strategic direction for us, and our strategic direction, which I am recommending, is that we enter into discussions to transfer the town hall to the City Council or its nominee. I appreciate what you're saying, that this has undergone a significant amount of scrutiny, and when I said we have huge works to do at the Shire Hall, we cannot financially do both.
Leader, can I just come back briefly about this? I do think that ought to be considered the possibility of having a county heritage building trust, because throughout the county there are these type of buildings. The Shire Hall is one of them, and even in the market towns that could be part of this. And the reason that is attracting additional funding, which the council can't. And having lots of different trusts throughout the county make it much more difficult. It has been done in other places, I understand.
Thank you, Councillor James. I would imagine that the clerk of the City Council has been listening quite intently to this, all the opportunities which might be available in this building. I mean, we hope that the City Council and its nominee, whatever that structure may be, will be able to find a business case to enable it to go ahead and take over this building. That is our hope. I guess your point, Councillor Lester, is that if it is a financially viable venture, why don't we as a county council keep it? Well, this building should have been transferred to the City Council many years ago. We've been operating for the last 3 or 4 years, trying to keep it going. We know the costs of maintenance for it, and we don't see this as part of what we want to keep in the future. We'd rather give the City Council the opportunity to go out there, the sort of public subscription, which you mentioned, the public body that might take it over. Well, that might come out of the discussions with the City Council, who knows? So we'd like to give every opportunity to the City Council to get out there and raise the necessary funds to keep this building in the public arena. So I think, if I may, I think everyone is at the cabinet in favour of. Sorry, I haven't. No, I need to go to Councillor Fagan. My apologies.
Thank you, Leader. It's a shame that the failed policy of austerity has actually led to the deterioration of this really important building, and it makes obvious sense for the City Council to take control of it, and so we support the direction that this is moving in. Thank you.
Councillor Wilding.
Thank you, Leader. I think the Hereford Independence for Herefordshire would support option 1. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Lester, I think probably you'd be double-hatted on this, speaking on behalf of your role on Scrutiny Committee and also as leader of the Conservative group. Is that right? Do you want another bite of the cherry?
Well, it's just that we thrashed it out, but we had some real concerns that, you know, there was a discrepancy in understanding between the council and the City Council as to how much money it would really cost to renovate the building. And we thought that needed to be made much clearer, an agreement on that be established before any further discussion went on. We also were concerned that there was damage and damp to the building, and we really wanted that addressed as soon as possible, so that the City Council, Town Hall City Council, my apologies, the City Council weren't in a situation that they were in a building that was not acceptable to meet in. So, you know, those were the concerns that were raised there. But go back to the point about whatever is decided as the fate of the building, it's such an iconic and important building. So we really appreciate the sentiment that it should be, you know, maintained for the public. It's one of those iconic buildings that we need to take care of and ensure that whoever ends up responsible for the building, that building goes from strength to strength, because it's one of our great assets of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I think to your first point about the state and condition and that sort of thing, that's really for the City Council to work out. We've totally open book with them and their partners, and whoever they end up taking it on. We want to make sure it does have a future. The worst thing will be for it to be transferred to someone who then lets it run down. We want to have a decent look at the building. So I think those points have been taken into account. I think Councillor Davis wants to comment as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to Councillor Lester's point and assure him that I'll get a written response to him around the works that were required. So I know there was things around the dry rot, etc. And we are in a position now, and I expect a kick from the Section 151 officer if I've got it wrong, but I do believe that the work's due to start within the next couple of weeks on that dry rot issue. So the emergency repairs are being done as per Scrutiny's recommendation, but I'll get that formally in a written answer to you, because I do think it's important to follow up with Scrutiny to make sure that we recognise that we listen to what they say. And yes, thank you for reminding me it's Hereford City Council. They will get very angry if we call them Hereford Town Council. So yes, it's Hereford City Council.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will put recommendation A1 to the Cabinet, because I think that's what everybody's in favour of. So all those in favour of recommendation A1, thank you very much. That is unanimous. Would you like to let the other councillors back in? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we'll move on to item 9, which is the Cabinet Commission restoring the Y. This is in the absence of Councillor Harvey. This is Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm presenting this item as Councillor Harvey is unable to be here today. Herefordshire Council has been undertaking lead role in efforts to support the restoration of the Y. And for clarity, the Y and the lug are not, strictly speaking, in terms of legality and governance, the responsibility of the local authority. They are responsibility for their protection of the national agencies, the Environment Agency in England, Natural Resources Wales in Wales, and obviously in Natural England as well in England. The issue is that we have, for all sorts of reasons, austerity included, had a reduction in capacity in those agencies, and over the last 10 or so years have had a reduction in the health of the river. So this is seeking to find a way of focusing the political intent of not just Herefordshire, but the 3 authorities that are neighbouring us. We have done quite a lot so far. We've had the UK's first development phosphate calculator. So phosphate calculators have been done before, but not in relation to how they might trade in and deliver mitigation through the amount of phosphate that's been taken out, precise measurement. We've delivered the integrated wetlands through which we will be using the phosphate calculator. And we are also working on an agricultural supplementary planning policy, which is about to be published for consultation. The Council has been a driver for supporting improvement around the Nutrient Management Board and is invested in a significant national influencing role for progressive river restoration. Like the Nutrient Management Board, the Council has been pressing hard nationally for more to be done to protect our environment, including calling for a water protection zone to tackle the diffuse phosphate pollution. We have 2 points of pollution. We have diffuse, which is essentially unable to address at a single point because it's either agricultural or other runoff, and we then have the water treatment plants, which we can focused intervention on. Disappointingly, our request for a water protection zone, which was supported by the entire council across all political parties, fell on deaf ears, and the minister then refused our request, believing that more could be done within the existing frameworks, which hadn't worked before, but we admire our optimism. Our response was just to take a step back and look at where we could explore what we could do more. In July 2020, the Cabinet agreed the principle of establishing a Cabinet Commission to look at restoring the water quality across the wide catchment. We also agreed then to bring the final terms of reference and membership of the Commission back to this Cabinet. Over the summer, a lot of work has taken place to develop and scope the emerging work programme. I attended a joint meeting with Powers Council Cabinets in August and was pleased to discuss the changes that are emerging on both sides of the border. I was delighted to hear how the Welsh Government is now very clear in its determination to ensure our rivers are protected. Previously, when we started this journey in 2019, we had difficulty in engaging neighbouring authorities and the Welsh Government, and that has changed tremendously. I'm therefore delighted to announce that Councillor Jake Berriman, Powers' Cabinet Member for Connected Powers, will be joining our Commission. Discussions have also taken place with Monmouthshire, where we share our river with Monmouthshire and with Powers. They are very keen to collaborate, and so I can confirm today that Councillor Catherine Mabey, the Monmouthshire Cabinet Member for Climate Change and the Environment, will join the Commission too. We three Commissioners are very keen to take a fresh and comprehensive look at this complex issue. Whilst we are using our wellbeing powers to undertake the work of Commission, we recognise that our actions are voluntary and our recommendations cannot compel, but hopefully guide those we work in partnership with. Our ethos will be to move beyond entrenched positions, to collaborate and build consensus for a new vision and plan with governance structures in place and delivery mechanisms enabled to progress the plan. To that end, the Commissioners will want to work closely with the Chair of the Nutrient Management Board, and I know that she's very interested in the work of the Commission. I've also extended an invitation to Natural England, the Environment Agency, and Natural Resources Wales to appoint principal advisors to the Commission to support its work and guide us with the expertise they have within their domains. We are keen that they respond favourably and want to work with us. Furthermore, I have invited Farm Herefordshire, the National Union of Farmers, and the Country Landowners Association to step beyond the regulation and work with us to build a solution at farm level. The engagement that we have had from farmers has been fantastic, positive, and I hope transformational. Likewise, we are keen to work with the Wire Agri-Food Partnership, which comprises the major national producers and national retailers, to identify what can be done to develop and put in place the infrastructure necessary to reduce phosphate levels down to the ideal levels in our soils and rivers. As a local planning authority, we also have to take the opportunity, we will also take the opportunity of refreshing the local plan to ensure it meets the desire of our residents to protect our environment, deliver new homes and deliver a thriving local economy, all in line with our county plan objectives. Finally, each Commissioner will work closely with elected members in their own authorities appraised and involved, and will be involved in the work of the Commission by way of workshops and briefings at appropriate junctions. In Herefordshire, this will include updates to the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Panel, who are taking a very lively and engaged interest in our work. I think it's also fair to mention that the national policy position on nutrient neutrality and environmental protection is quite fluid at the moment, and it is uncertain, and therefore we would like to keep our terms of reference under review so that we can adapt them to any formally proposed changes. The news coming out from central government that there may be a lifting of restrictions or environmental and ecological conditions worries us considerably. It worries all our residents considerably, once again across the political divide. The work of the Commission is therefore timely, and I note that our local MPs have requested that the plan to save the Wye is developed. We'll report back in March. I also plan to offer the 5 MPs across the catchments an opportunity to meet with us so we can continue to seek national support to tackle these issues. Thank you.
Any questions, comments in the room? Councillor Chance?
Just a quick comment, really. I very much welcome the establishment of this commission. We do need that strategic approach. I think John touched on this, but this cross-council work is really, really positive, and really welcome the support that we're getting from Monmouthshire and Paris, and there's a real sense of a kind of shared determination and agenda there. Yeah, I can phrase this as a question, John. You commented on the fact that in reality there are limited levers in the hands of local government when it comes to regulation of diffuse agricultural pollution, for example, and there are very worrying signals coming from central government at the moment regarding habitat regulations, regarding the environmental land management scheme, regarding the whole future of the idea of public money for public goods in terms of agricultural support. Will the Cabinet Commission be taking every opportunity to lobby the MPs to ensure that national government policy works for reducing pollution and protecting nature as it absolutely should do?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Chance. Precisely, we will be doing that. I think that, as pointed out, this is a voluntary commission. However, we have the people who are the decision makers in all of those 3 local authorities involved. We will be able to directly lobby the government and to explain to them and to ministers who don't seem to always quite understand the situation on the ground, judging by previous interactions, that this is not this is a position that we all take across all industries in Herefordshire, and that we will not accept or tolerate a reduction in the standards that we expect in protecting the river.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to put the camera on as well.
listen to Councillor James's saying you can see people, so I've done this. Yeah, a couple of things. One of them is once a teacher, always a teacher. Where are the smart guidelines here? So it says we're going to set up a commission, but I can't really find out the time part of it and when we're going to be reporting. I see that it's got terms of reference to come to the next cabinet meeting, but will that include that detail about when we'll be reporting back, how long the commission is going on for? Because my experience is that when you say working group, it doesn't really have a finish and it doesn't really have those targets. So I just want to know where they are. And the second thing is that, you know, I always talk about equalities, and it made me cringe when it said that the equal design something that helps to reduce and minimise those inequalities. And what we do know is that people who are more frail, people from more some different backgrounds, certainly with regard to economic backgrounds, will face worse inequalities as a result of poor rivers. So there are some key people that I think you should be speaking to as part of this commission at the beginning, not at the end.
Okay, noted on that point. I think we're presenting the terms of reference, but you're quite right that that we should be focusing on the making sure we get the equality assessment correct. Can I ask Rachel Joy just to come in on timelines? I think once again we're presenting the terms of reference, but perhaps we can offer a bit more detail, Rachel, on timelines.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Harrington. The commissioners will meet monthly over the next coming months until March of next year. They will report back formally in March of next year. In the meantime, around the main areas of farming and agriculture, farming and the supply chain, the national policy and planning framework, there will be support activity around that with those organisations that we've named, such as the NFU, CLA, such as the Y Agri Partnership, that will feed back into the board. A lot of this will work informally and will be emergent. At the moment, we have the engagement in place from these groups who are willing to take a fresh look at it. And I think, Councillor Davis, that is an advantage of a local authority looking at this with its wellbeing powers, rather than regulators having to look at this through regulatory lenses. So is there a nailed down project plan on what are we going to do on day 1, 2, 3 and 4? No. But is there a dialogue emerging that will lead to a set of recommendations? There is. And around that as well, of course, there is the work that we will do to engage with the Nutrient Management Board, a call for evidence, because actually we want to strengthen governance in that area. We want to have legal accountabilities in place for the work of the Nutrient Management Board and a much clearer performance reporting structure for the Nutrient Management Board. And that will tie into the work that I'm doing with the Welsh NMBs to help establish NMBs within Wales. So smart objectives, I've tried not to be prescriptive. I'm trying to let the sectors come forward, hand them the problem, and then say, how do we work together to achieve a solution? So I'm taking a much more, shall we say, organisational development approach, if you're familiar with that kind of approach, rather than a project approach. I hope that helps, Councillor Davis. And I do take on board your point about equalities and also the corporate parenting point as well that has come up today. So I think there are opportunities to look at how looked after children could perhaps join in the citizen science programme, you know, to provide opportunities as a corporate parent there for wider engagement as a corporate parent too.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think one of the things I like about this is the straightforwardness of the terms of reference and the aim to develop a strategic plan to restore the River Wye catchment to favourable conservation status. It's nice and straightforward. So Yeah, everything could go back to that, and it's as broad and as narrow as we choose in order to achieve that objective. So I'll turn now, if I may, to group leaders, starting off with Councillor James.
Oh, thank you, Leader. I totally welcome this particular setting up of a commission. I think, albeit that the powers that will be available to the commission will be going to be, or the three councils are going to be very, very small. But united, the three councils will be able to have a stronger voice. Now we've got new administrations in Monmouth and new administration in Powys, and there will be some stability for the next 3 years for the majority of the 4 years for the majority of the councils.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. We welcome greater efforts to address this issue, but I think it's really important that the Cabinet Commission works hand in glove with the Nutrient Management Board. Otherwise, we don't want duplication, and so working well together is critical here. And on the call, we do have the chair of the Nutrient Management Board, so it's a plea really to ensure that that working is going to work well. And Councillor Swinglehurst does an amazing job, and so all power to her elbow, and please help her in that role. Thank you.
Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This is going to be a very, very difficult issue to tackle this week. I went to a meeting of the Friends of the Upper Wye where they looked at what had happened to the Illinois River, the watershed leading to that, where in 2005 they were aware of the impact of poultry units on the deterioration of the watershed, and there has been a 15-year battle to try and rectify that, and actually they're not very much further forward, and it's the same sort of poultry operators that we have. So it's not going to be easy. We know that the national planning policy framework is against us. We know that the sort of current politics are against us. And we also know from a lot of evidence that actually destocking the catchment is one of the sort of top solutions to this problem, and yet that is something that we are all politically afraid of speaking about. Councillor Hewitt and I took a motion to the July full council meeting about this particular issue, and specifically looking at 5 points that we wanted the new Cabinet Commission to address. And I wonder if I can just get some assurance, possibly from Councillor Harrington, that that motion that was passed unanimously, the points that were raised in that will actually be addressed and evidenced, evidence of that being addressed by the Cabinet Commission.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fagan. That's already part of the consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilding.
Thanks, Leader. So we totally support this commission and the cross-council cooperation. We're also appalled that there is any suggestion from government that ecological rules are going to be relaxed. So all our rivers are totally under attack. So what we want to see is as much action as possible to protect and enhance them. So we welcome the commission. Thanks.
And Councillor Swinglehurst, in your capacity not only as chair of the NFB but also as the relevant scrutiny chair.
Leader, I'm not the relevant scrutiny chair. That would be Councillor Stark. But I'm happy to speak on behalf of the Nutrient Management Board, who discussed this and were supportive, and I'm personally supportive as chair and as someone who's working on this issue. I can see tremendous opportunity here, and I think Councillor James said it right. The three voices together are stronger. and working within the political sphere and looking at the specifics around what the LPAs could do together, I think it will be very significant, and it's something that the board itself cannot do. So I very much welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smallhurst. So Councillor Stark.
Thank you, Leader. In starting my response, I think I should actually spell out the proposal that was before the Scrutiny Committee, because not everyone will be aware of it. We were asked whether we were assured that the restoration of the River Wye public inquiry and review is being considered effectively through the Cabinet's Phosphate Commission proposal. That word assurance is very important. We did look at the actual proposal in detail, Leader, and we did actually consider the terms of reference as well. And overall, I think we were happy that we had a general level of assurance, but there were two key areas where we would be seeking further clarification from you at our next meeting on the 18th of November. Can I just remind you, Leader, too, that we had put down two recommendations from our July meeting on the Commission. One was to encourage participation from neighbouring local authorities to become involved in the Commission. And I'm delighted, Leader, that we now have three commissioners, one from Herefordshire, one from Powys, and one from Monmouthshire. So I think that recommendation from us has been met. The second recommendation, I think I'm going to come back shortly to, because I don't think we've had a satisfactory answer up to now. And that was our desire to make sure that the membership of the Commission involved councillors from across the council who had appropriate expertise in this particular subject matter. I'll come back to that. But in response to that proposition, where we assured, I can say, Leader, that the actual committee did vote that we were assured. On the two key issues, the first one was around this recommendation about wider membership of the Commission. I think we were concerned, Leader, that the Commission could become isolated and a very high level body and detached from the actual council itself. I did understand that Councillor Harrington was suggesting that there would be some workshops and other sort of engagement activities with the full council, but that's not the same, Leader, as involving members in the day-to-day work of the Commission, particularly members who have very, very welcome expertise in this area. And if he doesn't mind me saying so, I would say that Councillor Ginman would be one just to think off the top of my head. Your response that you would be looking at ways that you could actually include this expertise from across the membership of the council, I don't think goes far enough. Because although I welcome this initiative, although I think it's great that we're taking leadership here, please remember that back in, I think it was January or February, we all unanimously backed the proposal for a water protection zone. We are only where we are today because of the negative response from the government to that proposal from all of us. And I just think we need to consider in moving forward that we do keep involving those councillors who have expertise in this particular area. And that will be one of the key areas we'll be asking for further clarification on when it comes to our meeting on the 18th of November. The second area of clarification I think we need to consider is the relationship between the Commission and the Nutrient Management Board. I know Councillor Swinglehurst is here and has a much greater knowledge than me, but at the actual Scrutiny Committee, it was voiced that the Nutrient Management Board had its authority from the previous construction of the core strategy in 2013, and that actually was to achieve nutrient neutrality wherever we were seeking to have new development across the county. So when it comes to the Cabinet Commission relationship with the Nutrient Management Board, I'm not sure that the Cabinet Commission can have a directing role in the governance of the NMB. I think we need to be looking much more at a coordinated and collaborative approach between the two. And I was pleased that Councillor Harrington was indicating that today. So that will be another key area we'll be seeking clarification on at our meeting on 18th November. Finally, I was pleased to hear that the ESSC will be getting regular progress reports from the Commission, and I'm looking forward to that final status report, Rachel, in March, when we look again in the ESSC substantively at this item. But can I just finish by saying that despite those two key issues that we want further clarification on, the ESSC does back the Cabinet Commission and is delighted that Herefordshire has shown the initiative in trying to fill the vacuum that was created by the government not responding positively to our proposal on a water protection zone. Thank you, Leader.
Leader, can I just ask just a point of clarification when we're doing acronyms just on screens, that we don't do acronyms, that we say the name of them, because if people in the public are listening, they won't know what that acronym means.
Do you want me to spell out what the ESSC means then? Yes, it's the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee. Okay, you're quite right, Councillor Davis. I get into the same mistake as everybody else.
Councillor Clark, are you able just in one sort of sentence to identify the first question and do this, and we'll deal with that, and then the second.
If I might suggest, Chair, he's asked us to bring the two areas that we were discussing back to scrutiny. I think that's the more effective way of doing it. We've had the conversation about anyone sort of superseding another voluntary organisation or otherwise. I think we had to get clarity, Councillor Stark, on whether or not the core strategy reference gives the voluntary body of the Nutrient Management Board any more legitimacy or authority than anything else. I think it was referenced by the inspector as giving her certainty. I don't think the framework necessarily means that it's set up differently from us. But all those fair points, and we will make sure that we give you some clear answers and get that clarity. And of course, the idea is to work extremely close with Councillor Swinhurst, with the committee, to make sure we get this right. Our only concern is that by focusing it on essentially one cabinet member from each authority, we're trying to provide perhaps an ability to move more fast, more swiftly, more aggressively in a sense where we have to. But that's not to say we should not be getting our direction and refreshing our input. And I think Rachel Joy wants to come in on that.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Yes, if I may, Leader, as well. With regards to the Nutrient Management Board, that is a voluntary partnership. It's a voluntary body. It is referenced in the core strategy, as Councillor Harrington says, as evidence that attempts are being made to seek nutrient neutrality. I think it'd be fair to say that the Commission is a voluntary piece of work by the Council with no statutory powers to direct agencies, but it can produce recommendations following a call for evidence. And I would like to assure members that there will be a call for evidence on that, but we won't be proposing anything that we believe would be a weaker plan than we have today, or weaker governance arrangements that we have today, and therefore we're confident that when the local strategy and the core strategy are refreshed, then the inspector ought to welcome that. There is a point on the relationship with the Nutrient Management Board that I am duty bound to explain as well, and I'd like this recording, please, in the minute. The statutory bodies, the regulatory bodies, Natural England, the Environment Agency and Natural Resources Wales are willing to work with us insofar as they can. We have discussed the terms of reference with them. You will see in the terms of reference their comments on the terms of reference, but it would be fair to say that they also have concerns about duplication. They have concerns about the emerging, how we will manage the emerging national policy framework. And we hear, fortunately, that DEFRA ministers are now in listening mode. So we'll be using those opportunities to progress that. But I want to offer an assurance to Natural England, the Environment Agency, Natural Resources Wales, that's the intention of the Commission to work with and not against, produce recommendations that are deliverable, and to collaborate with the Nutrient Management Board, accepting it's got us to this stage of the journey with some able leadership from Councillor Swinglehurst, but we now need to look at what is needed for the next leg of the journey.
Thank you, Rachel. I think we'll move on. So the recommendation is the Cabinet agree the terms of reference to membership of the Cabinet Commission restoring the River Wye. All in favour? And yeah. I've made a mistake. The previous matter, I only put recommendation A1. There is actually a B which we need to approve just for sort of governance purposes. I need to make sure that it's all okay. So I'm just going to Francis here to the two people who weren't involved in the debate. Well, yeah, sorry about that. Yes.
20 seconds. Don't take it, see you, be back.
I'm taking that tea.
So my apologies, totally a case of mea culpa. So the recommendation B was that the Director of Resources and Assurance be authorised, subject to consultation with the Cabinet Member Commissioning Procurement Assets, to take all operational decisions necessary to implement the prepared recommendation. So just to square the circle and make sure no one protects, that's all in favour. Thank you. And of course, the recommendation one included the words "the Council or its nominee." My apologies for that. Okay, would someone ask the councillors to come back in?
Steve's on it.
Back in 2 minutes.
Do we need a break or should we keep going? Keep going? Yeah, good.
Although David asked if we wanted a break and then just went, so no, 2-minute break would be good.
Okay, 2-minute break.
Make it
Do we actually,
Fine, there we go.
do we then close the live? First is the annual review of earmark reserves, and the purpose of this is to note and review earmark reserves held by the council. I'm pleased to present the annual review of earmark reserves. Cabinet is asked to note the level of reserves within section 151 officers assessed as being reasonable and prudent. It is important that Cabinet, councils and the public have some understanding of the figures in this report. Whilst the figures show a healthy level of reserves, over £100 million, they are earmarked for particular purposes, varying from matching liabilities in some areas and what some might call rainy day funds, which a prudent householder would recognise. An example of a rainy day fund is the severe weather fund, kept in case there is unpredicted bad weather. As we all know from the news, we are facing some stormy economic weather, and so I want to take the opportunity as a Section 151 officer to provide his opinion on a couple of the larger items on the list. So included the figures is 23.1 million of grant funding, which in the narrative, page 10, is referred to as not having been allocated to relevant expenditure. Perhaps the Section 151 officer could comment on whether there are any circumstances in which any of these funds could be available, for instance, to shore up next year's budget. You may want a little time to consider that question, and a written response may be preferred. The other significant reserve is the Financial Resilience Reserve, which is again a large number, 70.4 million, with a rather vague title. Again, in what circumstances might those funds be available? So I wonder whether you could perhaps Let us have some background or whatever on those two questions.
So thank you, Leader. I will provide a written answer as well, so that people have got a record and I'll go into much more detail. But the £23 million that we hold for grants, we tend to get grants in advance. That's how government operates. So we're given the money which we hold, and we then, as we spend it on the projects, we release it from that reserve. Some of these grants are for a number of years, so we are fortunate that we have the cash up front from government or the grant making body, and we hold it. So without looking at all of the detail, I'm not aware of any grants that we could just divert into other things. But I'll give a detailed breakdown of the grants we hold. So that's it on the record. The financial resilience reserve, as you say, is a reserve we hold for all sorts of financial issues that come through. It is quite widely used. We don't have a strong definition by its nature because we don't quite know what things will come across the over the hill towards us. But as you've said, that the current economic uncertainty means that we do need all of the reserves there to ensure that we can deal with the shocks that are coming through.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty we have at the moment with clarity around government funding, as well as the impact of inflation on cost base.
Any other questions? Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to make the point about I'm really pleased to see that we have got the monies coming forward for the 20 miles an hour speed zone, because that was one of our motions as well. So that's really good to be seeing that, because I've had several questions since that was raised back in, I think it was February 20. So that's really good to be seeing that, as well as looking at the others, especially the Eastern River crossing. That's so important going forward. And just welcome that report. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, I just briefly want to comment that I think it's a really, really positive use of public health reserves to pay for work on road safety, which is such a crucial public health issue, and also to pay for work to support school travel plans to help young people to travel more safely and more actively to school. So I think that shows a really strategic approach to public health, and I really welcome support colleagues for that. And I also I bang on about energy efficiency quite a lot, and it is a very, very important thing, and especially so now as we are getting into winter, we're facing fuel price crises, and so I'm very pleased that we are able to use a portion of reserves that are available for stuff that will have really important strategic impacts, to use that to support work on building retrofit and developing the supply chain to help develop the opportunities for people living in Herefordshire to have warmer, more affordable to heat homes. I can't think of many things that are more important and more kind of topical at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, just getting on the equality horse again. Just to say that Councillor Jones has just pointed out some really important things around retrofit. We've also talked about schools and travel plans, etc. But under our equality duty, it says we do not believe it will have an impact on our equality duty. It absolutely will. It will have a positive impact on our equality duty, and we really do need to be saying when we're doing things like that, because people need to know why we're making the decisions that we do. So can we just tie that up a little bit better, please?
The same thing applies on the environmental benefit. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'll go around to group leaders. Okay. Councillor James.
I don't really want to make any comment on it. It is what it is.
Okay. Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Yes, we note the expenditure. Just to remember that a report was commissioned that cost £480,000 reviewing the bypass and the transport packages. And the initial report that came to scrutiny said, don't go east. It's not a viable option. This £1 million on a business case is just the wrong thing to do. It's spending money going in the wrong direction. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's already been established that the best way to go is west with a transport package. And this, it's just so disappointing that this administration will be wasting £1 million on finding out that it's just not a viable option to address the transport issues of Herefordshire. The only way of getting a good transport package that includes active travel and a bypass and all of the internal improvements for Herefordshire and Hereford is to go west. And so this is just wasting council taxpayers' money, and we strongly object to this money being spent in this way. I know anything I say is not going to convince this administration, but we need to go on record to say that this £1 million will be a waste of taxpayers' money.
I think possibly Councillor Harrington might.
Yeah, no, well, Councillor Lester knows I'm going to come back and challenging on some of that. So the report that we had, the Herefordshire Strategic Transport Review, did not say that going east would be a waste of time or would not be able to be carried out. I think he needs to read the report a bit more carefully. We don't intend to go further than the Ledbury Road. We intend to get a second river crossing in terms of resilience. We will not be going across the Lammas Meadows. We will not be going across the area that previously been described in the past as an eastern bypass, as opposed to Councillor Lester's preference and his administration, and I believe the Liberal Democrats administration's support for a western bypass, which is not a bypass, quite frankly. It goes through central suburbs of Herefordshire, including Three Elms and Bopperstock, and seems to me to be primarily designed to encourage housing development on land that is at the moment grade 1 listed agricultural land. So this is a very sensible use of money. Unfortunately, the previous administration took about 12 years to spend about £12 million of money, and we had nothing to show for it at the end of that. So I think if we're talking about value for money, we need to be really careful. And Councillor Lester and I get on quite well. We disagree on a couple of things, including east or west, as he likes to call it. The issue I have is that for 12 years, the previous administration did nothing about all the other alternatives. It did nothing about master plan that we're trying to bring in. It did nothing about proper active travel measures. It did nothing about addressing school transport, which we know is a major issue in Hereford. It did nothing about trying to battle seriously and consider how to support our bus services. The report that we got back from our consultants said that an eastern bypass would provide a considerable amount of economic benefit, reduction in congestion, and was considerably less damaging than the west. So there we go.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. I'll pass then to Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Leader. I think that there'll be a lot of parish councils that will welcome dealing with the TRO backlog. So that's a plus. Certainly the 20 mile per hour. Anybody who's been to parish council meeting will know that the sort of speed of vehicles travelling through their communities is of real concern. So that's also welcome. Retrofit and making sure that our buildings can actually sort of keep people warmer, absolutely essential. And school travel plans, I mean, that was another failed policy of austerity, that we did away with school travel plans, and the chaos around schools that we see in the county is sort of partly a consequence of that. And I don't even want to sort of talk about the Eastern River crossing, because I know that the social media sites will be leaping on Councillor Lester's comments and berating us for making decisions that actually feel to me like the right decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Wilding.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm just going to echo some of the things Councillor Harrington just said. The idea that we're wasting money looking at at a second river crossing, which is purely there to make sure the city is resilient if anything should happen to the first bridge. The idea that that's a waste of money compared to the huge amount of waste of money of a western bypass, and not just money, a waste of natural capital as it ploughs through all that land. And as we know, it wasn't really a bypass, it's just a potential housing estate. And all those people would have bought 2 cars and all those cars would have gone on the road. And within about 5 years, the Western bypass would just be another car park like the M25 is most days. On the 20 mile per hour limit thing, I really think that's a great idea. The trouble is no one takes any notice of 30 mile per hour limits. I keep on getting people saying to me, they've got people speeding through their villages and stuff. And what we need is not only a 20 mile per hour limit, but some way of making sure drivers actually take note of it. The only thing I can think of doing is bringing in some more traffic calming in ways they do in small villages in France, so that drivers can't go faster, otherwise they damage their lovely brand new cars, even if they're electric. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wilding. So I will put it to the vote. So the recommendation is, first of all, the Cabinet note earmark reserves balance is held at 31st of March 2022 as at Appendix 1, and B, approve the following movements in reserves to fund the following projects. First, the implementation of county-wide 20 mile per hour speed limit zones at £1.2 million. B, school travel plan support of £310,000. Building retrofit and supply chain development of £580,000. Further development of the Eastern River Crossing business case, £1 million. And then reducing the backlog of traffic regulation orders and carrying out further signing and lining of £660,000. So all those in favour of those items, thank you very much. All in favour, all agreed. So I move then on to the Q1 budget and performance report. So I present this report on the Council's in-year performance as at the end of Q1. So that is as things stood back at the end of June. Again, I'd like to acknowledge how frustrating it is to be here at the end of September as Q2 comes to a close, and only now to be in a position to formally consider the financial forecasts and progress in year on delivery, which is practically 3 months out of date. This is nothing new. It is always the case that Q1 reports come to Cabinet this time of year, and its delay is due to the hiatus in council meetings over the school break, etc. That said, I'd really like us all to look at what would need to be done to bring this report forward faster, so we can all feel as if we're discussing a current picture rather than a rear mirror view. So with the massive caveat on the data and commentary that there is 3 months in arrears of the position we're in today, I'm keen that we take this opportunity to recognise and explore the difficulties which are unfolding for the council as we deliver services and one-off projects during the worsening economic storm which is being presided over by the present government. As members can see from the summary table provided at paragraph 3 to the main report, before taking mitigating actions and anticipated movements and reserves into account, at the end of June, this council will face a forecast end-of-year position of a £9.4 million overspend compared to our working budget. Nearly 6.3 million of that overspend is represented by the other half of the additional £11.49 million Cabinet were asked back in March to provide to support the transformation and improvement programme ongoing in our Children's Directorate. As I hope you will all recall, at our 31st of March Cabinet meeting, we preferred to release this funding in 2 tranches, the second tranche of 6.49 million being subject to a progress report on the delivery of the improvement plan, originally planned in July this year. Consequently, this end of June forecast of the full year position was 6.27 million of the funds ring-fenced in reserves still pending that release decision, and therefore outside of the working budget. The recovery plan column at the table shows the mitigating actions planned within and across the council's operations that are planned to address the economic and operating pressures which are ratcheting up in year for this council in exactly the same way that they are causing hardship and distress for so many of our residents and businesses. When we set our budget back in February, there was talk of inflation being 4%. and possibly 7% at some point in the year, before returning to more manageable levels. As it turns out, inflation was already 6% in February and was topping 10% at the start of July, with the Bank of England now informing the Chancellor that it will only be with increases in interest rates that inflation held around 11% for the remaining part of this year. For this council, we are also having to deal with the impact of high energy prices on our operations, as do residents throughout the county, as well as a higher forecast pay supplements for our hardworking staff that was anticipated at the start of the year. Significant inflationary costs in the care sector, both for residential settings and for the delivery of care in the homes, are creating pressures in our contractual arrangements with service providers. And inflation and supply chain issues in the construction and building industries are making all aspects of the delivery of our capital programme and public rail and transport services more costly. Some of these pressures are being resolved by us having to make the difficult decision that we must expect to achieve less for the funds we have available. But there are many services, particularly across our care sectors, where the option to do less is simply not one that is available. I'd like to take a moment to put on record our huge thanks and appreciation of our Chief Executive, his leadership team, and to our officers at every level of the Council, who are making enormous efforts to rework delivery plans and to identify new savings to offset these ballooning cost pressures. It is dispiriting to put effort into making exciting and possible plans, only to have to moderate our ambitions and rework our programmes all over again. As you can see from the mitigated forecast figure in the summary table at paragraph 3, the sum of these collective actions, and with the expectation that assurance of progress will be provided for the development of our children's services, our overall outturn for the year at Q1 is actually predicted to be a £500,000 underspend. Alongside that, I'm pleased to see that the content of this report demonstrates that we continue to plan for exciting and important investments in our city and market towns, in our economy, in broadband, in home and energy projects, in the public realm, in progressing a second river crossing in the city, in improving the conditions of our rivers, in delivering new open market and affordable housing, improving our planning policies for future development, in strengthening and empowering our communities, in strengthening our working relationships with parishes, with partners, with business, and with our farming community. I hope you've all had time to see how many of our delivery plan ambitions remain on track. And since June, progress has been made on a number of those that were facing delays and awaiting funding decisions to move forward. And I'd like to thank our Head of Corporate Performance for her work with service areas and staff to develop further our performance tracking and evidence-based decision support tools, which are assisting us to become more agile and responsive in managing our business in these very uncertain times. Whilst we continue to distribute energy discount funds, counter-tax support, and hardship funds to individuals and to households across our communities, we remain in the dark ourselves regarding any support which we might be made available to local governments to help us with these same cost pressures. Whilst government continues to make some extraordinary choices, we shall continue to show ourselves to be fiscally responsible, efficient, effective, and trustworthy in our support of the least well-off and in the delivery of services and projects to time and to cost. I will pass over now to my Cabinet colleagues to pick out some of the priorities and highlights from their own portfolio areas from this report. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. A difficult one, isn't it, yet again? And we're talking going back a few months. So the main variances that I want to talk about really are the overspend in services for vulnerable adults. We all know as we get older, we need more, and the cost of care provision is extremely high. The cost of care reflects a combination of savings yet to be delivered within the learning disability client area and the pressures that relate to nursing and residential care home placements with the older client cohort. The forecast overspend in care home replacements relates to both cost and demand pressures. This is one of the areas that we've been strongly working with, and to date now we are looking at making our savings that we predicted. So an awful lot of work has gone in to assess and reassess care plans, care packages, so that residents are getting what they need. We are paying for what they need, and we are making sure they are getting exactly the care they need. The team obviously work very hard every day trying to make sure the money is spent in the right area. One thing that I was particularly concerned about was paragraph 31 about the statutory returns that we received from the carer survey. Although it's not a great number to look at, we have positive trends increasing from 33% to 40%, and also the overall satisfaction is up slightly from 60 to 61%. Because all these surveys are anonymous, we are taking feedback and looking at ways of addressing either specific concerns or commonalities. So again, more work is going on to make sure that we improve service. I thank everybody in the Directorate for their hard work and commitment to trying to give everybody what they need and to look after the pennies, because the pounds will look after themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Crockett. It's such a huge area of need and expenditure. Who would like to do next? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm really pleased that this report shows really very good performance in the economy and environment and areas, and the vast majority of delivery plan projects are on track. In one or two cases where they're not, it's actually because of things like we're waiting for the central government to make decisions on things like levelling up funding. And a large majority of indicators are showing improvement on last year. So it's a really positive picture. As you've already mentioned, energy costs are an issue that we're facing as a council, and that is the main driver of, the forecast variance in my portfolio. Despite the efforts that we're making on energy efficiency, we are, as you pointed out, the council is suffering from the same issues as households themselves are suffering from. I've got a couple of very specific questions actually to Andrew, if that's all right. On the Treasury Management report, Andrew, page 68, it really struck me that of our investments, the best rate of return that we are getting is currently from a Standard Chartered ESG green finance, sustainability finance deposit. And we've got a couple of other of those, but not all of them. And I think, it really demonstrates that actually that sort of, triple bottom line of environmental benefit, social benefit and financial benefit absolutely comes in a package. I think it would be very much in line with our commitments as an administration and as a council as a whole to social value and environmental value if we could default to using, ESG sustainability finance deposits whenever possible and appropriate. Could you clarify whether we have that as a default position? And if we don't, perhaps you could bring a paper to Cabinet for us to consider taking that as a position. That's my first question.
I'm happy to pick that up. In terms of the oversight of the Treasury Management Policy, that sits with the Scrutiny Management Board, and they're due, I think, December to have a look at the policy. So I think we need to feed it into that process, because that's the arena for setting the Treasury Management strategy. You're right that we are getting good returns, and we're getting the double benefit of investing in the right thing and getting good return. So our default position is to get a good return. So we are very much aiming in that direction. But I think it would be helpful for the Scrutiny Management Board to look at the Treasury Management strategy and to further strengthen where we put that spare cash Appreciate this was up until the first quarter. As you can imagine, things are slightly different now in Treasury management in terms of the moment with the recent events. So we are being quite cautious in how we invest our cash, seeking security in investments. I'm happy to bring a paper back as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, I think, yeah, you know, it's a shared responsibility because ultimately it's full council that votes at the budget, isn't it, on our Treasury management strategy. So I think, yes, if we could take that proposal forward through the appropriate channels. Thank you. And your comment kind of segues nicely into my second question, which relates to page 69, where you talk about long-term borrowing. And it just makes me wonder, you know, what is the likely impact on the council of the complete turmoil in the market caused by the trust and what a mini budget and, you know, the really financially and economically disastrous situation that we find ourselves in this week, on top of record high inflation and, you know, all of the other challenges that were already very significant for us. So can you comment on the turmoil of the last week and the effect that has on councils?
Yes, I'll try to. In terms of the council's position about borrowing, long-term borrowing, the majority of our borrowing is public works loan book, which is a fixed rate. So when we signed the deal, we're locked in, and some of those are 40-year loans. So we've not been impacted directly on the cost of borrowing because all of our loans are at fixed rates. Clearly, we've had some advantage from slightly better interest rate returns on the spare cash we invest. One of the things that we're looking at in terms of when do we next need to borrow a tranche of money, I've got a conversation with our Treasury advisors early next week to look at that. We need to see beyond the current turmoil in what the markets are doing and take a longer term view. But you're right, it's very difficult at the moment to see how this is going to settle down unless there's some other intervention. We'll wait and see what happens. But so to answer the question, we're not exposed on the cost of borrowing by what's happening in the current markets because we're locked into long-term rates.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, just to firstly give a really huge thank you to everybody in my portfolio area for the relatively small overspend. I just think it's worthwhile pointing out to people, if you have a look at the reason for the overspending in my particular area, it's mostly down to those inflation costs with regards to our waste collection contract. It's really echoing what Councillor Chang was just saying about the turmoil and also about the upcoming decisions about the budget. And it's just, you know, forewarning, this is what's to come. And we're all going to be having to make some really difficult decisions over the next few months. And I don't think that we can play that down enough.
Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Chair. It's still a worrying picture, isn't it? And even though I've got a small overspend, as like Councillor Davis has said, it still shows that there's still volatility, especially with our trade. Our markets are still suffering. They're trying to have confidence, but there's still a worry there. The impact on gypsies and travellers as well, because some of the pitches have had to be closed until further works are done. But what I have to remind members is that most of my portfolio is a statutory duty, and you know we are still cutting cloth here when we should be supporting statutory duty through the council, where we can generate more revenue for the council. I just thank all my officers again for all their hard work and delivering some good outcomes. And I'd just like to mention that our air quality monitoring system are now being implemented in Hereford and Bargate, and they've been delivered on time and on budget, and a few other things. And I particularly would like to mention about our housing delivery programme as well. It's on track, and hopefully you'll see papers coming towards Cabinet in the next month or so regarding our pipeline. But I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that works tirelessly for my area.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to briefly talk about car parking, because that was the variance that was showing of 110. We've actually considerably reduced that. We've performed better over the last quarter in terms of car parking, and we have no reason to believe that wouldn't continue. So just as a bit of information, that's helpful.
Thank you for that. of the issues in the children's area. So I think we'll move on to group leaders. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know, I mean, I echo your thoughts or expressions of disappointment at the timescale of this. You know, this is 3 months behind, 3 months ago, but I got no indication from the meeting as to what the current situation is. I know you don't have the figures, but is that moving in a better direction, or is it going even further, looking towards a greater overspend?
Mr. Lovegrove, I mean, you're the man. I don't know whether you're able to comment on that at all.
Well, I'm happy to say that it hasn't got significantly worse, but it hasn't got significantly better. That's a tactful way of saying it. So the recovery plans that were being worked on are yet to have a big impact, but we're confident they will start to bite and actually have that impact as we go through the remaining 6 months. Yeah.
But I mean, the problem is we're heading towards a difficult period, the winter, and all the possibilities that might have, and also with the economic climate nationally.
Can I just kind of clarify that, of course, the 9.4 million is a projected overspend by the end of the financial year, including the winter. So it takes into account all of those issues. And as discussed a moment ago, more than 2/3 of it is projected overspend in children's, which will be addressed, which reflects essentially our improvement plan and our planned investments. So just wanted to kind of really clarify that we're not overspent by £9.4 million in the first quarter.
We also have grants to come.
We're looking ahead many, many months. And the need to manage prudently during that period.
But does it take account of predictions about litigation that will be taken against the council within children's services? Because there's huge litigation in the pipeline.
Mr. Walker, I think you might have some comments.
Leader, for me, I think Councillor Childs is right in terms of the forecast. There's a forecast at Q1 in terms of where we may remain at the end of the year, based on what we knew at the time. There's a huge amount of work being done in all of the areas that works to bring those budget figures online. So at the end of the year, we come in on budget, and there's lots of work being done by directors with portfolios to allow that to happen. We do have continued and ongoing pressures because of the care costs associated with children's services, but we are making progress within that area too. And we'll continue to work hard, so we do as much as we can to bring that budget figure in line with the original agreed budget at the end of the year. And my understanding of the Q2 performance report comes back to Cabinet, is it November Cabinet? So we will be right on the timescales there. Councillor James, in terms of any future litigation that the council may face with regards to children's services, that is a matter for the future, and perhaps not one that we talk about today, because we clearly have not received any details about that.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, obviously it draws to attention the challenge of presenting a report that is a snapshot of the past, and it begs the question about giving, adding on more up-to-date information so that we're clear on what the true picture is. And it's alarming to think that there's this £9.4 million overspend, but more detail about whether that's an actual correct figure or not would have been helpful. And I note Mr. Lovegrove's comments, but that's not really the clarity that I think we could benefit from. There is an item in the report on the second page where it looks as though the report is quoting track changes because it mentions Mr. Lovegrove's name, and it's just disappointing that the quality of the report didn't spot, in looking at the quality of the report, it didn't spot that anomaly. And I'm not sure who the sincere apologies if we do have a colleague called Appy Reddy, but the email response, the email at the bottom of the page, I think that's a misprint as well. But I think the main point is, given the financial pressures that the council is under, it's absolutely critical to grow the economy. And I know Councillor Harrington had the opportunity to talk about and try to refute some of the points that I made about the transport package and the Western bypass. But the whole thrust of the argument there is that you have to grow the economy, you have to provide the infrastructure, because you can't rely on governments continually to grow your own economy. And we need to grow our own economy. We need to provide those houses so that, we have the housing that our residents need, but also that we can ensure that we can make our own communities sustainable. And I will just come back and say that the report that I was referring to does say, and it cost £483,000, I think it did. It says, and I quote, the package, which includes the Western bypass, is forecast to provide the greatest congestion relief to the city and the greatest resilience for the transport network. The own report says it, which is the point I was making about why spend an extra £1 million when we have serious financial issues.
Point of order. I've got a point of order, Councillor Lester.
We have serious financial issues to address. When it comes to the performance, it's clear that we have serious financial issues to address, and to ensure that we make sure that we spend every penny properly. We must make sure that we're diverting the council's resources to addressing the real issues that we face.
It's the chair's discretion. I'll happily answer that.
Yes, another people will probably reply to that.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's chair's discretion, so it's point of order. It's a fair challenge, but so Councillor Lester will remember, because he remembered that the option for an Eastern Link provided almost as much, in the opinion of the consultants, as much congestion relief and economic benefit. So the timelines were, in my opinion, considerably more risky in terms of a Western bypass, which is about, at least 10 or 12 years away, which would cost £250 million, of which the council would have to find 60 million, which would congest an area even more than it's congested now, which would increase the housing in inappropriate areas and would not address the climate emergency that his own administration helped to sign up to. This is absolutely entirely the right way to go about things. It is more prudent than the amount of money that the previous administration spent on producing something that is not, as I said, once again, a bypass. It is a road through some suburbs in Hereford to allow building. We will build in the appropriate places. We will make sure that the increase in resilience and the reduction in congestion will make the difference on very comparable terms.
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you. Before Councillor Lester tries to correct other people, he might care to check his facts. A correction was issued on the typo that you mentioned, Councillor Lester mentioning Andrew Lovegrove. The name Appy Reddy is the name of our head of corporate performance, as you could find out if you spent 10 seconds checking the address book. And the statistic that you have quoted from the transport report is extremely selectively selected. You haven't quoted, for example, the same report, which says that it is 4 times more expensive to reduce congestion by building a bypass than by taking active travel measures. So I think we should keep our focus today on the report in front of us, and we should make sure that we all read the full set of documents that are issued.
Can I say, I tried looking for the email address, and I apologise if I couldn't have found that address. So I apologise to that officer for that comment, but I could not find that address. I did try looking.
Okay, well, I think we'll bring that debate to a close unless.
No, is that are the other group leaders said?
Mr. Lovegrove, did you want to comment on anything that Councillor Lester's? No, you're okay. So moving on then to Councillor Fagan.
Thanks, Leader. I'm trying not to get all sort of hoppy here, but it really sticks in the craw hearing Conservatives talking about growing the economy when their leader is actually tanking the economy as we speak. But anyway, back to the report. I've got a couple of questions. So I just noticed in the environment and economy section about the increase in energy costs and but also the barrel bikes. I wondered whether do barrel bikes, since the grant funding has been withdrawn, are barrel bikes actually able to kind of wash their own face, or are they going to be continually, you know, are we going to have to be financing them? So that was one question. And the other question was just within the children and families, the overspend. I wondered, is that overspend, is that over and above the money from reserves? I think it was the 11 million that was drawn down earlier this year. So that's just two questions, thanks.
Yes, I can answer on that. So on the barrel bikes, we have had to give a further grant because we've asked them partly to do, well, we have asked them to produce more bicycles and increase the bicycles, to bring in electric bicycles and to bring in even more electric bicycles and also potentially bring in cargo bikes. So wrapped up in that is another grant. So I can come back with more detail on that. I suspect in reality, a bit like buses or any decent service, public service, there will always be an element of subsidy. That is something that a grown-up authority should understand and deal with. Transport for London subsidised to nearly £1 billion a year.
Thanks. And it was just the question on the children's and family overspend.
Could you refresh us to that question?
Yeah, it was, I think it's there's a sort of significant overspend there, and I just wondered if that, you know, is that over and above the 11 million that was drawn down earlier from this year from the reserves?
So the answer is yes. So the drawdown from reserves is a separate figure. We haven't yet accessed all of that money. A separate paper will come to Cabinet in the near future on the drawdown of the second half of the earmarked reserves. And there's a pressure in year on our placements and our staffing budget.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, Councillor Wilding.
Thanks, Leader. So I've just got two questions. First one is an easy one. How much does it cost to fill a pothole these days? Because I've heard that cost has gone up by about 60% recently. The second question is for Andrew Ludgrove. Can you think of any other ways that the council can make more money besides concreting over all of our countryside? You know, are there any other green initiatives that we could leverage? Is there some way we could form a think tank, including perhaps energy firms like Kepler Energy, to help us develop new ways to make money to fund council spending? And then the biggest asset that we have in this county is our natural capital. And as it becomes more apparent that climate change and the crisis is having a massive effect, that natural capital is just going to go up in value. So we just need to protect that all the time so that we can exploit it when the rest of the country catches up and realizing that we've saved the natural capital and they need it. The problem is you can't keep growing the economy indefinitely because we live on a finite planet. So how are you going to square that? Going back to the potholes, if a pothole has gone up by 60% in the last few weeks to fill, how much more is it going to cost to build a bypass? Thanks.
I don't know, pothole figures, no,
Well, it's probably more a question for me, and I don't have precise detail. I do know that the cost of all the raw materials have gone up considerably, and I don't know where those figures come from, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not necessarily over the last few weeks, but certainly over the last few months. I could probably find out. I could ask developers, and they will give me an answer. I'll let them know.
Thank you very much. Okay. So
was there some questions that? Okay, I'm probably
yeah.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wilding. That's a very big question, which I don't think I have the answer to. I think that that is the challenge we face in local. We're trying to get as much extra income as we can. But you said that, as you said, we can't keep chasing forever, getting more and more income. So there is a trade-off that needs to be handled and dealt with. And that's one of the conundrums the council will face when it sets its budget in February. And Cabinet are working very hard and looking at all of the options. The Scrutiny Management Board, which is a new structure, are looking at the budget a week on Friday. So it's a very live issue that we're debating.
Thank you, Mr. Lepro. Okay, so I think I'll bring this to a conclusion. So the recommendation is that Cabinet, having reviewed performance and financial forecasts for the year 2022-23, as set out in appendices A to E, has not identified any additional actions to be considered to achieve future improvements.
Chair, could I just ask you something, please?
Before we
just for a point of clarity, I just wonder whether it should be appendices A to D plus Annex 1, just for accuracy. Anybody else?
We've got appendices A to E listed in the papers.
A to D plus Annex 1.
My version says appendices A to E.
It says that, but when you look at the papers,
they're not A to E. No.
Yeah, it's not A to E.
It's really all right. It's really all
right.
Sorry. So what's marked as Annex 1 is actually part of Appendix D. So Appendix E begins on page 77, and although it doesn't say on the paper itself, Appendix E, it is the updated delivery plan. So I believe the recommendation is accurate.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Anybody else want to comment on that? Councillor, Mr. Lepro is screen.
Councillor Chant is correct.
Yes. Okay, so I'll put our recommendation is appendices A to E. E contains some other appendices as part of it. And we haven't identified any additional actions to be considered to achieve future improvements. All those in favour, show of hands, thank you. That's passed. So I now close the meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, 27th of October.